Hello again, it's Carl from selfsufficienthub.com, and today we're going to be making kombucha. So kombucha, I'm sure you already know, is a fermented tea drink. It is jam-packed full of probiotics, healthy bacteria and all the stuff your gut loves. So it's great if you're recovering from something, particularly a course of antibiotics or something like that. But it's also good just to top up to make sure that you've always got the healthy bacteria you need in your body. So it's a two-stage process, and we start off with some tea. Now, there are 1,000,001 different kombucha recipes out there, and you can, of course, find your favorite, but the one I use is the one I'm going to show you today, and it is incredibly simple. All you need is obviously some water, and then some fruit tea of whatever flavor you like, some green tea, some lemon juice and some sugar. Depending on where you look online, you'll get all sorts of information. I have read that green tea has some specific things in it that the kombucha needs. I'm not sure as to the scientific validity of the claim that the things in the green tea are necessary. However, I use 1 tea bag every batch, and a batch will give me 5 or 6 wine bottle size containers full of kombucha. So, you know, it just wasn't worth me trying to do the research myself and delve into the background of it for what it costs. I just thought I may as well throw one in there. So my recommendation is to throw a green tea bag in every time. And of course you can do it just with green tea if that's what you want. However, I and my family prefer the fruit flavored ones. So we tend to use something like this. Now, this is just a cheap own brand variety from the supermarket. Again, as of next year, we'll be making our own tea bags with red berries and things like that in. In my experience, there's not a great deal of difference between them. So just go for a cheap one, at least to start off. So how do you start? Well, you get yourself a pan. Now, some of you are going to hate me for this, but I don't measure anything. I just do everything by eye, by feel, particularly when I'm making things like kombucha that are a natural product, when I'm making things like vinegars, sourdoughs, and I just do everything by feel, because whatever exact measurements I give you today, they may be different for you anyway for the perfect result. So I just do a nice big pot, and again, I know by eye that in this pot, that's going to give me about 6 wine glasses. So I put that much water in, and then I add 6 tea bags of the fruit tea, 1 tea bag of the green tea, a 1.5 cups of sugar, and a dash of lemon juice. So the same amount of lemon juice you might put on, say, 2 pancakes. Now the lemon juice, it just gives it that tiny little bit of acidity, which I really like. Again, there's all sorts of claims online as to whether or not it's a required element. To my mind, it was just such a simple thing. Put a bit in, and then at least I don't have to worry about whether or not it's a required element. The problem is with kombuchas is that you can afford to mess them up. So because the Scoby, which is the living thing in the base of our fermentation, because it is a living thing, it doesn't require the perfect environment all the time. It can go through 2 or 3 batches where it's not getting everything it needs and still be fine. So because of that, I was wary of doing damage to my Scoby or possibly killing it without realizing I was doing it until it was too late. So I just figured I'd read enough versions of the story out there that said you need to put some lemon juice in, that it wasn't worth me trying to take it out. So I put a dash of lemon juice in and 1 green tea bag for the same reasons. But the 2 elements that are certainly required are the flavoring, if you want it, which again, I use the fruit tea, and the sugar. Now the sugar is super important. It serves 2 purposes. Obviously it adds sweetness, so it does make it sweet, which you kind of want from your kombucha. But critically, the most important thing is that is your Scoby food. That is what your kombucha Scoby is going to be eating. So I think at this point it's quite important that I show you my Scoby. So here's my Scoby here. It's floating on the top there of my kombucha. And Scoby is an acronym, SCOBY, and it stands for Symbiotic Colony of Bacteria and Yeast. So this here is a colony of good bacterias and yeast that are both alive and they live together. Symbiotic means that they work together and they form one unit, one living unit. And that there is what does the job. That's the magic part of your kombucha. So we start off by simply making a nice sweet fruit tea. That's all that is, it's a sweet fruit tea. Now at this point, we add our Scoby to it. First thing I'm gonna do, obviously, is I'm going to remove my tea bags, and I know how many are in there. So now all I've got left there is a sweet fruit tea, very sweet, it's got plenty of sugar in. And then at this point, what you do is you add your Scoby. So I'm gonna transfer it across from the batch that I made a few days ago to the current batch that I'm starting now. I just bring it all to a nice rolling boil and I leave it like that for a few minutes, and then I put the lid on and I let it cool down to room temperature because that's the temperature my Scoby's used to. You add the Scoby across while it's still hot. Obviously you can kill it if it's too hot, so just let it cool down to room temperature. And that now is our first stage of fermentation beginning. So that Scoby now will start basically eating the sugar. So you do put quite a lot of sugar in here, but what you need to remember is much of that sugar is metabolized by your Scoby. So it's not actually going to be in the final product. So that Scoby is going to literally eat the sugar and it will grow over time. And the gases and what have you it gives off are what gives your Scoby the fizzy fermentation flavour. The only tricky thing to get hold of can be the Scoby. So now I'm going to give away a kombucha Scoby to the first 5 people that request one. All you have to do is you hit the like button, leave a comment down below letting me know that you'd like a Scoby. And so long as there are no restrictions with the postal service and how I can get it to you, I will send you a Scoby in the mail free of charge. I will contact you below with details of how you can get in touch with me outside of this video to claim it and give me your details and stuff. So the first 5 people to request one will get one, so long as you hit the like button and leave that message down below. So that is now stage 1, and what we do now is obviously we cover it up. Now shortly I'm going to be transferring this into this container, which is where I do my phase 1 fermentation. I screw the lid on very loosely because much like if you're fermenting anything, there'll be gases building up, or if you're making wine or beer or whatever, you need to allow them to escape. But what you don't want is bugs and nasties getting in there. And you leave that for anywhere between 4 days and a week and a half. The warmer your environment up to a certain point, the faster that fermentation will take place. The cooler your environment, the slower that fermentation will take place. The more liquid and sugar you have, the longer that will take place. And the less liquid and sugar you have, the quicker that will take place. The next thing is when you start out and you get quite a small Scoby, it could well take up to 2 weeks. But as your Scoby grows, so in every successful batch, your Scoby will literally get a little bit bigger. As your Scoby grows, and it takes less and less time. You know it's ready by the taste test. So what you want is it slightly sourer, just slightly sourer than you want to drink it. It's as simple as that. You want it, you don't want it to taste like vinegar, but at the same time, you don't want it to taste like tea. You know, it's got to have that tang to it. That's how you know that the fermentation's taken place. And what we have here is effectively what that will be in a few days. So this is the phase 1 complete. You've got 2 options here and they're going to be based on your audience. But I run it through a little coffee filter. The only reason I use it is because my audience includes my kids and they don't like to see the small Scobies that will grow in the drink they're drinking. When they pour it out, it puts them off. We still get the little Scobies growing in the second ferment, and that's fine, but less of them and a smaller size. Okay, so here we are. This is the kombucha at the end of stage 1, just starting stage 2, the second ferment. So what we've done is we've just filtered them into these jugs, and again, the filtering is optional. And then I've added, these jugs are between they're 2 litre jugs. So there's just under 2 litres in each one. So I'm expecting each one to do 2.5-ish of these 75 centilitre bottles. So I've added roughly a tablespoon of sugar for each bottle that it's going to do. So I've added 3 to each. You should be aware of the sugar content. You know, if you're diabetic or you have other issues relating to sugar intake, then it's certainly something to be aware of and do your own research. But what you also need to be aware of is a lot of the sugar, again, is metabolized by the Scoby, because there is still activity in here. Even though we filtered it, this is still very much a living product. So, and how you know that is because if you taste it now, it's a flat, sweet tea. And when it's finished the second ferment, it's going to be fizzy. Now what we're going to do is we're going to decant it into these bottles. And they have got a flip top lid, which is going to be airtight. Now that's quite important. You can do it with screw-on lids or whatever method you wish, but it has to be something where you can vent the excess gases. And then they're going to go in the fridge. So if you leave them out the fridge at this temperature, what will happen is it will continue getting sourer and sourer, whereas in the fridge, that process kind of stops and it moves on to a second stage where literally the idea is just to give it that fizziness. And then over here, what we've got, so I've literally just got these out of our fridge. This batch here is the last batch I bottled. So they would have been in the fridge for just under a week. So they are now, in my opinion, I haven't tried them, but I suspect perfect for drinking. And these are the ones that we started drinking 4 or 5 days ago, and we've got 2 left. So these still need finishing up. And every few days, you just vent the tops and then put it back on again. How often you need to do that will very much depend on your bacteria and how active they're being. So that's it, kombucha. And so these are here, what I'm drinking right now, and they're delicious. I genuinely hope that you have both found this helpful, but also that you go and try making some yourself. It is, if you like kombucha, there's nothing better than knowing you've made it yourself from scratch, and you can really start experimenting and finding what works for you, what's your favorite, what's best for you. And there really is not many rules. I suggest you do a bit of research when you're thinking about changing ingredients, when you're thinking about trying new things. There's not many rules, there's lots of guidelines. So for instance, I want to start using honey instead of sugar. Whether I'll be able to do that every batch, I'm not so sure, because I've been led to believe that there are, I mean, honey has quite a lot of antibacterial properties. So obviously I don't want the honey killing my good bacteria. So whether I'll be able to use honey on every rolling batch or whether I'll need to every so often use a batch of sugar so that the Scoby can recover, I don't know. That's research I will do when I'm ready. But there's nothing you can't do. And in my experience, the Scobies are quite tough. This is the first one I bought and I experimented with it a bit at the start, and nothing I did seemed to knock it back. So don't be too shy, but just do a little bit of research about whatever the specific changes you're looking to make are. And I certainly hope you try my recipe, and I hope you like it as much as we do here. So that's Carl, selfsufficienthub.com. Thanks for watching.